Welcome to another episode of Courageous Me. And I'm so excited because today we have the glorious Shelly Medina. And Shelly has just come off the back of the Courageous Me action retreat. So I was in the process of getting to know Shelly a little bit more and having some great conversations. But holy mackerel, I learned a whole lot more about this incredible rock star woman. And she has been brave enough to come on to this podcast. So, Shelley, before we learn a little bit about who you are as a person, can you just share what excites you to have this conversation with me today around courage?
I think the biggest thing for me, and actually just coming off the retreat, is I'm in a phase in my life where I'm looking for courage and the courage to make decisions about my life. And the retreat and where I am at the moment, I've got a lot of perspective about what that looks like now. So putting courage into play or practice is what excites me about this conversation.
Oh, that's so good because it's not easy, right? So, can you give us a little bit of background as to who you are, but
Sure.
also why you're in this place where you need to make some decisions? How have you got to this place?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I am one of three girls. My parents were migrants, Colombian. I came to Australia as a 2-year-old and have lived in Australia my whole life. I have three beautiful young men um, in my life and a loving husband. Um, in terms of where I am, I always knew I would get to this point in this transition where the boys have spread their wings and they're living their best lives, which is all I ever wanted for them. And now I am without that need to be needed. So it's a transition phase for me, a lot more challenging emotionally than I thought it would be. And also, too, a few months ago, I was made redundant. So I've had a lot of time to be in my own head about where I am right now.
So there's a number of things that are, and big things too, that are
Yeah,
taking place.
yeah,
Just let me ask, what were you made redundant from? Tell me just a little bit about that background, just to set the scene.
sure. So my background is in finance. I say I fell into my career. I didn't plan it, and I had amazing people who believed in me, so was able to have some really amazing roles in finance. My last role was with an organisation called Fincia, and I was a business development manager slash relationship manager with them. And I was with them for about 3 years. And the business changed, and my role was no longer needed.
Okay, so you're with them for 3 years. So when you say you've had a background in finance, how many years would you say you've been in finance?
I started in finance in 2002.
Oh, so a
Um,
while.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it was purely out of desperation. I'd come out of a marriage. I had two young boys, and I did not want to stay at home. I wanted to go and work. There was a paper, an ad in the local paper back when they used to do those things. And it was asking for people to work in a call center in a couple of suburbs down from where I was. And I applied, and that's how it started.
Oh, wow. And so before that, were you actually a stay-at-home mum? Is that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I'd had a couple of different roles or jobs. I'd worked in retail. I'd done a beauty course, and I had my own little salon before children. So I'd done, a few things then. But then when I had children, I was like, okay, I'm going to stay home and look after the boys. Um, but I thought, for my own sanity, I think being a single mum, when you've got a partner to help you raise children, you can do a bit of a tag team effort. When you're on your own, I think it's a lot harder and you need external stimulation.
Absolutely. So you had a beauty business.
Yes.
Tell me about that. That's really interesting.
I yeah, I married very young,
How young?
and
How old?
I
How
was
old?
21 when I got married.
Oh, little. Yeah.
So yeah, very, very young. I had lived a very sheltered life. Like, my parents were very protective. They were very traditional. And so I hadn't really lived I hadn't really experienced life. So I married young, and I had all this freedom, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had absolutely zero idea. I hadn't made it into uni. I'd wanted to do teaching, and I hadn't made it into uni. And then I got married, and all those sorts of things. So I sat down one day, and I thought, oh, I like makeup. uh, and there was a beauty school close to home, and I applied and I did my course. And once I started to apply for roles as a beauty therapist, I didn't really like the culture of a lot of the businesses that I was applying for, and there was an opportunity to set up a salon in an existing salon, and over in North Sydney, because I grew up in Sydney. And I did it. And I really, now that I think back to that, I had no idea how to run a business. I like zero inkling of anything. I just knew I was good at giving facials and massages and those sorts of things. So I was just going to do that. And I did that for about 2 years. And then I got pregnant with Liam. And so I gave it up and never really went back to it.
Wow, but that, I mean, that's courage in itself, right? That you're this beauty school graduate, if I can use that language,
Yes.
and instead of just going and working for someone where you haven't liked the culture, you've gone and set up your own show
Yeah.
in a salon. Like, how old were you when you did that?
23.
23. And 23 back then. I mean, nowadays, 15-year-olds are setting up their own businesses.
Yes.
But back then, that was really, really unusual. Just can you just take me back? So you wanted to do teaching. Why
Yes.
was that? What was it about teaching?
I love learning. I think the idea of growing your mind and learning, but then being on the flip side of that and imparting knowledge, I think is a really noble thing to do. And so I had wanted to get into teaching, but my last 2 years of high school, I just didn't focus, and I didn't make it into uni. So yeah.
So you went to beauty school instead
Yes.
because you liked makeup.
Yes.
There's a good enough reason. Growing up, did you know you loved teaching from when you were young? Like when was an experience where you realized that you loved learning?
I think there was one teacher who probably did it for me, and it was my modern history teacher, Mr. Osborne, his name was. I'll never forget him. And he was so good at what he did. I would go into his classes and I'd be enthralled by everything he had to say. And he was so encouraging and supportive. And it was, I did really well in modern history because of that. And I would look up to him and just go and just see the passion and the love for what he did. And so for me, that was like, that just seems like an awesome place to be potentially influencing young minds seems like a really amazing place to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. But isn't it funny how when you have had an experience at school, you remember the teacher's name?
Yes.
Or better or worse.
Yes, this is true.
But it's the teacher that was the thorn in your side who's made you remember most. Okay, so you've gone and done that. You took this job at the call centre.
Yep.
And you obviously stayed for a long time because you said your career in finance was, from back in the early 2000s.
Yep.
How did that pan out? Because you haven't gone to uni, you've gone to beauty school, which I'm not sure a lot of the training at beauty school would help in financial services. How did you do that? And from a courage perspective as well, how did you do that? What sort of went through your mind as you progressed?
Yeah, so look, call center life is tough. It's really tough. It's, every second of your working day is measured. And I didn't love it. I didn't love it. But I was you know, I was doing it for my family. I was working, I was doing it for my own mental health as well. I had the people in call centers are fun. You know, they're fun people. And so it was nice to go into work to interact with with these, you know, amazing, charismatic, happy people. And then I did that for about 9 years. And then my husband got an opportunity to move to Melbourne. And I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to move to Melbourne internally with the bank that I was with. So we did, and it was the organisation had just rebranded a certain part of their banking, and they were young and funky and trendy, and I was a mum who was really in, you know, in the depths of being a mum. You know, I had 3 kids, I just moved to a new city, I had a husband who was traveling a lot, and I just was like, this is probably not for me, this environment. And I decided to try the customer facing part of banking. So I went into the branches, and I was still working part-time, and I worked with a female manager who was really tough. Like, she was just a really tough lady. And she was like, you can do better, you know, you could do more, you could do more. And here I am going, I don't know, it just seems like a lot, you know. And she's like, you can do more, you can do more. And then one day our regional manager came in and said, you know, your manager has said you're amazing, you're wonderful, I want to offer you a role as a branch manager, a secondment as a branch manager in one of our new branches. And I remember smiling and being like, oh, this is, yeah, absolutely, you know. And he walked out, and I just went, oh my God, I'm not that person, like that, no. And I did it, you know. I came home and I said to my husband, hey, I'm working full time, so it's, you know, all hands on deck now. I'm a branch manager. And so, yeah, that sort of translated into a lifelong career in sort of leadership roles across different areas of banking.
Oh, and you know, in leadership roles, of course, you're teaching, right? So
Yes.
no surprise that teaching element, albeit maybe not, you know, doing history classes at a school,
Yeah.
but it's still coming out through you. I love that moment though, when you've had your boss who's going, you can do better, then you can do better, then you get the offer, and you go, yes. I can see, I'm sure so many of us have done that, smiling between gritted teeth, but inside going, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. How did you? So you didn't stop you from proceeding. Why do you think you still did it, even though at that point there were some doubts and fear going through you? What do you think allowed you to keep going and just taking it and owning it?
Um, there was a couple of things. I think I've always believed that you should only regret the things you didn't do. So, you know, this was an opportunity that had presented itself, whether I was prepared for it or not. But then part of me was also quite, it was a huge compliment. You know, it was a huge compliment for somebody, for 2 people, you know, my manager and the regional manager, to see in me something that I didn't think I could do. And I don't want to say obligated, but I felt like I owed it to them to show them that they'd made the right decision.
That's inspiration though, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
that gets you, it's like, well, if they've both trusted me to do this, then I better show them and prove that I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there's a thing called the Pygmalion effect, and it's a behavioral science thing where they talk about, you know, when others believe in you, you actually end up performing better because you don't want to let them down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah.
I love that whole concept of, and isn't it funny though how sometimes it's others who see that in you that you don't,
Yeah.
and it's something that, yeah, you definitely need to run with. So
Yeah.
did you start, as you started building your career in financial services, did you start to love it, or how does that sort of play out? Because you said, you know, obviously falling into it, was
Yeah.
not a conscious choice?
Yeah. I There were elements of it that I really loved, and you know, when you talked about the leadership and the coaching, that to me, it was always my favorite part of being a leader. I I took so much pride, and there was so much time spent on developing my team, and encouraging them to form their careers, and and do their job really well, and find a love for what you do. And I think you find a love for what you do when you start to do it well, and you're like, oh, this is good, this makes me feel good. And so I loved that part of it. I really did love that part of it. Um, I think I went through phases of who I was as a leader, and there were phases that I went through that I'm not particularly happy with. The finance industry, very male dominated. And there were times, there was a phase in my career where I felt like I had to be really hard, like really strong and assertive. And it didn't feel natural, but it felt like I had to do it.
Why? Why did you
Um,
feel like you had to do it? Was there something said? Was there a pressure being put on you?
I yeah, I'm a very direct person, and I can get to the point very quickly. And so I ended up being the leader in our sort of region that would go and fix branches, and performance manage people. And so and I was having leaders telling me, "Oh, you're really good at this because you're firm, and you're harsh, and you're direct, and all those sorts of things." And so that's who I became known as in the business. And I remember saying to one of my leaders, "I don't like this," and he was like, "But you're so good at it." I was like, "But I don't like it. I don't like being the harsh, you know, woman of steel that comes in and throws people out the door and fixes things. I want to be a mentor, and I want to inspire people, and those are the things I want to be known for as a leader." So I had to make a very conscious choice to be like, no, that's not who I'm going to be as a leader. I'm not going to be harsh. I'm going to be kind. I'm not going to be firm. I'm going to be clear. Yeah.
And how did that play out? Because I can so see that, if you've behaved in a way and it has worked and
Mm,
you've then been labeled, given an
mm.
identity that maybe you didn't choose, that whole living out of alignment with who you really are is hard. I love that you said you made a conscious decision that that's not the leader you wanted to be. How did that then play out? Like, firstly, how did you make a change? And what did you actually do to bring more of the real, Shelley leadership to the table that felt more natural for you?
Um, there was I'll never forget. I think there was a conversation I was having with a peer, and he jokingly, and it wasn't malicious or anything, but he jokingly said to me, "Every time you walk in the branch, I hear the Darth Vader entrance music."
I love Star Wars, but I don't think that was
Yeah,
a compliment.
yeah. And I sort of chuckled, and then I went away and went and thought, I don't think that's a compliment. I and if that's how I'm being perceived in the business, that's not a nice person. It's not a nice person. And so I started to soften my approach with my team. I started to get to know them on a personal level. I started to have more conversations with them about why they were doing the roles they were doing, what their dreams and what their aspirations were. And I put in place plans to help them get there, And for some people, it was, I'm just working here because my dream is to do X. I need a job, and so I'm working here, but my dream is to work in marketing, for example. And that's okay. You can have a job and aspire to be in a different industry. And I started to see so much more support from my team. They started to work better. We started to get better results. And I thought, yeah, this is working much better than that hardline approach that I'd been taking.
And I love that it was actually the Darth Vader comment that turned you to the good side, so to
Yeah.
speak. The conversion. We all
Absolutely.
know, anyone who knows Star Wars, that deep down inside, Darth Vader was actually a good man who just hung out with the wrong people. Well, I don't know if you call them people. How did management, how did leadership take you doing things differently when you got this identity as being the fixer and the hard one and the Darth Vader one, and now you're taking a much softer approach? However, it's getting results. How did management and leadership deal with that? And did they notice? And do you remember a time when they made comment or noticed?
I'd, sort of moved through different leaders at the time, and I had moved into a new role, and it was a female leader, and she was or is a really beautiful, gentle person as well, even just the way she talks and just the way she engages with people. And we had a conversation about who I had been and who I wanted to be as a leader. And we were getting great results. And she said, "You see, it can happen. It can happen, and it's fine, and you don't have to be." And leadership you still have to do difficult things. It didn't mean that I wasn't being asked to performance manage staff, or to drive results, and to really be a leader, but I was still getting the same results, but I was using a very different approach. And it was that female leader who had known, because she'd been in the business when I was Darth Vader. And she was the one that had noticed the shift, and she'd said, that was part of the reason why she'd brought me into her team, because she'd noticed that I'd made that shift in who I was as a leader.
Oh, and how old were you? Do you roughly?
This was, I'm going to say, about 8 years ago now.
Okay, so
recent.
give me just an age without giving away your current age.
Oh, that's all right. I was in my early 40s.
Early 40s.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love, though, that one, you did recognize that you weren't being who you really wanted to be, and that you did go and make that change, and it was recognized, and it's a favorable change. So yeah, like I said, that takes a lot of courage, because there's a lot of people that still are behaving in a certain way because they think that's the way they're expected to behave, and it goes against them, and it just gobbles them up inside. So yeah. So you continued then to lead the way that felt more authentic to you. And how did that sort of play out? Did that just, amplify, or how did that play out?
I think the best thing for me was that I saw my team creating careers that they wanted, and as bittersweet as it is to have an amazing team member leave, it was also that's awesome. This person is doing what they want to do. And so for me, it was really heartwarming, really, really beautiful and heartwarming. And, I still occasionally get messages from some of my team. And it might be hey, this is what I want to do. What do you think? Or just a check-in to see how things are going. I'm still really close friends with one of my ex team members as well, and she's her career is in a completely different field now. And when she was doing her masters, and we arranged a timetable so that she could go and do her uni, and and if she needed time off for study, it was like, that's great, go ahead. And her parents, we met with her parents, and her mum and dad were like, thank you so much for supporting her and letting her have the career that she wanted, even though it wasn't in your industry. And those are the moments where you're like, that's who I want to be, and that's how I want to be remembered.
And that's such an important thing, isn't it? Knowing who you want to be,
Mm,
and that it actually played out and it translated into someone else living a happier life because of the work that you did, albeit it meant you had to then replace her. And I know that, that's also a hard job. But if you've sort of set someone free to go and follow their dreams,
absolutely.
yeah, that's heartwarming.
Mm,
So with all of this going on, and you alluded at the beginning to the fact that you've been made redundant
hmm
from the work that you'd known and been
hmm
at for a long time. You've got your 3 kids who are all, spreading their own wings and living their own amazing lives. So you're in a bit of a state. Tell me about that. How's that playing out for you?
it's been really tough. It's
Mhm.
been really tough, and I think it's again, so much time to think at the moment, and I think it's a really interesting phase in my life, because my whole life I've dedicated to doing. I've been a mum, and I've been working because we need to pay the mortgage, and I've been a good daughter because that's what and all these things that I've been doing, and it's always been for other people. It's always been to make sure everybody's taken care of and nurtured and those sorts of things. And now I'm like, okay, so what am I supposed to do now? And I've gone, yeah, this is great. It's me time, it's my turn. But it feels really uncomfortable. It
Mm.
feels really uncomfortable to be in a position where I'm doing things purely and simply for myself.
Oh, imagine that. Attending to your own needs for a
Yeah.
day. Why is it uncomfortable?
um, I really haven't been able to put my finger on it. I don't think. I think it's you measure, or I've always measured my joy in life by how happy the people around me are, and the value that I've been able to add to their lives. And now it's like it's all on me. It's all on me. Your joy and your happiness is now no longer about the people around you. It's about you. And so I've had the time to stop and be like, so what is joy for me?
And what have you come
um,
up with?
yeah. Look, one thing I have discovered is that I like going to the gym. um,
I like that. I've discovered that I
yeah.
like going to the
Yeah.
gym. How did you discover that?
I Post COVID, we had all eaten really hearty, delicious meals 3 times a day. And post COVID, I came out and I sort of, okay, back into your work clothes. And I was like, oh, this is very snug. Um, and so I thought, you know what, it's fine. I'll just eat better and I'll do some exercise. And I did, and I loathed it. I loathed going to the gym. I loathed having to, have a bigger portion of salad than, fried dumplings. I don't know. And I just didn't like it. I didn't like it. But now I know I didn't like it because, one, I didn't know what I was doing. I was following what I thought exercise needed to be, was that if I had a fatty meal, I needed to punish my body and spend an hour on the treadmill. Um, and eating healthy meant eating lots of salad and drinking lots of water. And so there was no joy in that. There was nothing in it for me other than punishing my body for liking yummy food. um, and over the course of, and then probably about 18 months ago, I was like, you know what, I'm going to get myself a personal trainer. I'm going to get somebody to teach me how to use the machines, because I'd never gone to the weights area. It terrified me. And so it was always cardio. And I thought, I'm going to go and get a personal trainer and get her to teach me how to use the machines. And I started to follow people on Instagram and on social media who started to change the way they were talking about exercise, and it wasn't about being bikini ready, or it wasn't about, finding the horrors in the foods that we eat. It was about the benefits that exercise can do for your body, and the joy of knowing what your body's capable of doing. And so I started to change my mindset with exercise, and I would go to the gym, and I'd have a really tough session with my PT, and I'd do a personal best in lunges or squats or whatever. And I'd be really sore. I'd jump into the car. Well, I wouldn't jump because I'd be very tired, very sore. I'd get into the car and I'd sit in the car, and I'd be so proud of myself for doing what my body had done for me. And I was like, this is kick-ass. I'm a 50-year-old woman. I've had 3 pregnancies. I've worked really hard. My body's done a lot of hard work over the years. And at 50, I'm still able to do these really amazing things that I'd never thought I'd be able to do. And so my relationship with exercise changed a lot through that. Yeah.
Isn't that absolutely glorious that, your relationship with it? I love kick-ass. It's one of my favorite words. You rocked my boat with that. But just to look at your body from a different perspective, and to look at it from oh my goodness, you've done this for me?
Yeah.
Holy mackerel. And again, being someone who loves to learn, you said that you've learned to love this. This wasn't just something you actually loathed it at the beginning. You've used the word sort of learned and loathed, or loathed and then loved in the same story, where now you're looking at it from a different perspective, as opposed to punish, you've done that, so now you've got to go and, do your 100 sit-ups or something instead of. So what is your relationship with your body now? How would you describe it?
I think women innately, we're our own worst critics. I think we're our own worst critics. So, there are days where I will put something on and be like, ugh, what is going on here? But then there are days where, I go to the gym and I feel great. I look at myself and I think I feel really good about the way my body looks right now. And there was, I saw somewhere where it was like, you don't know who you can be impacting or influencing. And I had one woman in particular, and I just think this is the epitome of women supporting women. I was in the supermarket and I'd just done a workout, and I'm in my gym gear and I'm running around, and she sort of taps me on the shoulder and she goes to me, look, I'm not trying to hit on you, but I think whatever you're doing, keep doing, because you look amazing.
I love that she prefaces it with, I'm not hitting on you.
And I was like, oh, thank you. And that's when I was like, you know what? Yeah, this body looks good. I feel okay about the way I look. And that's okay. It's good to feel good about yourself.
Oh, I love that. And how old are you now, can I ask?
I'm 51.
You're 51 and you love how your body looks.
Yeah.
Oh, Shelly, that is so beautiful. Actually, can I tell you the story when I got a personal trainer? I've got a garage gym set up. My son was in prep, and there was another prep mum all doing the drop off where you stand and wait for the kids to go in. Anyway, there was this woman, and oh my gosh, she had the most delicious butt on the planet. She also had the shortest shorts on, so I think every other human there noticed. And I just went up to her and said, I didn't quite say I'm not hitting on you, but I made it clear that I was. But I just said, your butt, how do I get myself one of those? And she did say she was a personal trainer, so I need to get you to come to my house. Mind you, that was about 9 years ago. I still don't have a butt like hers.
Look, that's the other thing I've known. Sometimes genetics is what it is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And she works out like 20 times a
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
I don't do that, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think being able to own and love the body that you're in is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
So that's one part that's worked out really well for you. So just in this transition now, you've got your kids flying the coop. You've got time now to think about what you want to do with work. What does this look like? What's playing out for you?
It's really difficult because, finance is my background. I was good at the roles I had. I can still be really good in finance. There are, roles that I look at and I'm like, oh, that sounds really interesting. I could really do that and I could do it really well. I don't feel that that's where my passion is. And again, it's this, the discomfort and the almost the guilt of, okay, if I move into a different industry, it's potentially going to take me longer to find the role that I want. And in the meantime, I'm not providing for the household in financially, so it's this balance of, do I do what I want in my heart, or do I do what needs to be done for the greater good of everyone else? So beauty would be, to go back to beauty would really be for me the goal. I think that and look, I think then there's also fear of the unknown, right? I mean, there's beauty, and then there's the culture of an organization and the people who make that culture and all those sorts of things. So either way, it's a gamble. But I am being very particular about what I do this time because I am able to do it purely and simply for me.
And again, you said earlier that in itself is a really unusual space to be in because you're so used to everything you do being about everyone else, whether it's kids, husband, peers, those reporting to you, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
That you're looking after you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the beauty industry, and I know you and I have had this conversation before, but I just think it's so glorious.
Yeah.
What sort of role within the beauty, would it be setting up another salon or, a hands-on, what sort of role would it be in the beauty industry? If you could think about what you'd love to give a go, forget about the fact that maybe you don't have the industry experience or whatever, forget all of that practical stuff. What's in your heart?
It wouldn't be like the hands-on of the beauty industry. I think I'm very grateful for the career I've had and for the skills I've been able to develop in that career. And the leadership and the coaching and the managing of relationships and those sorts of things have all come about because of my career in finance. And my ideal role would be I'm able to, cherry pick all those skills that I was able to refine in finance and then go into the beauty industry in a role where I'm talking to people about the products or engaging with organizations about the benefits, of what the beauty industry can offer. I don't know what that role is. I don't know what the title of that role is, but it's certainly something which is a combination of the two because, the last 20 years in finance were for something. That's what the universe created this pathway for me. So there is something in that I can bring across into a different industry, I think.
Well, it's that whole repurposing of skills, right?
Yes.
It's just a different industry, different language and terminology, and the product suite is obviously quite different. But it's still using the skills that you've got and very much the teaching skills, right?
Yes.
Mentoring, coaching, teaching, all of that
Absolutely.
coming through. So it's like you can then just reapply that.
Mm.
And what do you think is anything scaring you about this stage?
That it won't happen.
Okay. Yeah.
That's probably the thing that scares me the most. That it's something I'd like to do and something I want to do, and that I'll find myself in a position that, despite how much I want something, I'm going to have to make a decision that's different from that. So I think that that's probably the thing that would hurt the most if it didn't happen. Yeah.
Mm. And what else, what are some other things that you're doing in this period now? So you're not working full time, which you've been used to.
Mm.
The kids are a little bit older. What are the sort of things that you're doing with your days now? Because it's an unusual place to be when you've worked full time for so long.
Yes, yeah, it's actually a really scary place to be, to open up your eyes. And the first couple of weeks, there was a really lovely novelty of being able to wake up and be like, oh, I can do nothing. um, and then as time went on, it's like, oh, I don't have anything on, and so there's been a lot of internal work, I think, for me, a lot of reminiscing about things, a lot of trying to understand myself better, reading. I took a photo of your reading list from the booklet that you gave us at the retreat, and went down to the shops and went, whatever book my eyes lands on that's on this list, I'm buying. And so I picked up The Courage to Be Happy.
Oh, that's a big, heavy one.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a deep one. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, a lot of internal work, and a lot of trying to understand myself, to be kinder to myself as well.
How are you doing that?
I think it's very much around the self-talk, that little voice in your head, that sometimes, there's those horrible moments where you've gone out somewhere and you've done something, and then all of a sudden you're in bed and there's this voice in your head that's like, oh, I don't think the person liked what you said then, and then this whole thing starts to play out in your head. So being okay with those sorts of things, just being okay with who you are, and accepting that it's okay. People don't think about you as much as you think they think. Um, so, yeah, just really honing in on that inner voice, and just
Mm.
little things. I downloaded an affirmations app the other day, and you get the little pop-ups. And every time one of them comes through, I'm like, oh, how did it know I was feeling like that?
It's funny. It's like if you do any card readings, or I've always got my oracle decks and stuff, and I pull it, go, huh? I didn't know that I
Yeah.
needed to do that today.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone's belief system's different, but yeah, when you're putting it out there,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. What else are you finding out about yourself? So you're doing this inner work. You've got the time to do the inner work, which I think is also glorious.
Mm.
What else are you finding out about Shelley?
Um, one of the biggest things for me is relationships. My relationship with my mum hasn't always been great. She was a difficult parent, and I think that carried over into the way I perceive relationships. So, the attachment to relationships, um, the the anxiety of wanting people to love and accept you, and those sorts of things. So there's been a lot of focus on that for me at the moment, um, and trying to forgive, I think is a good word to use. Accept, and also just, I mean, everybody has baggage, right? And so I think the thing for me is that it's okay. I'm not perfect in having, in maintaining relationships, or I'm not perfect at this, or whatever it may be. But that's okay. It's not a big deal. That's part of what makes you human, and if you acknowledge it and you recognize when you might not be doing or behaving the way you should be behaving, then that's a big step, and that's a really noble thing to do, to be like, oh, maybe that wasn't the greatest way to react to that situation.
But you're so right. Just having that awareness, being able to look at, and your relationship with your mother has been going on a long time, right?
Yeah.
Good, bad, or ugly. So to be able to look at that, take the learnings from that, and then apply them to say how your life is playing out with some forgiveness that she was doing what she did because that's what she knew.
Absolutely.
Not an easy thing to do, but I love that that's something that you're learning about Shelley. What else are you learning? Just one more thing that has come up that has been an insight.
What else am I learning? I'm learning that it's okay to say no.
Yeah. Why is that?
I think it's tough when you have grown up wanting, as I said, to have love and acceptance and all those things. And so saying no to people for fear that they're going to be like, oh, well, I'm just going to not talk to this person, whatever. And so I've learnt that that's not what happens all the time, and you can say no in a way that is gentle, and that people will be like, oh, no, that's all right. I understand where you're coming from, rather than a negative reaction to you saying no, and that's taken a long time, one, to work out how to say no in a way that is a gentle no, but also to the fact that, as I said, not everybody's going to react negatively to you saying no. And
Have
that
you got
those,
an example where you've actually done that and you've gone, that really does, it's okay?
yeah. Look, I think the most recent example was my husband and I talking about where I was going, what I was going to do as soon as this redundancy happened. And my husband's a fixer. He likes to fix things. So if I'm like, hey, this is what's happened, he's like, okay, so this is what's going to be done.
Like that. Yep.
And so, I told him about the redundancy. He's like, that's fine. That's
And did you expect that he wouldn't have supported your decision and would have gone, no, this is what you have to do? Because you're putting you first. Oh, Shelley, I love this. I love this. You're learning more about you. You're learning about relationships. You've already learned to love the gym and to love your body. I'm going to use those words. And you're also learning that, yeah, putting you first is actually okay. Yeah. And it, but hey, you're working them out, and that's actually all that matters, right? And just on that note, Shelley, tell me, what is the one next courageous step that you really need to take, where you've got to really reach in and find that dose of courage from deep within? Oh, that is so beautiful. That is so beautiful that it is not a failure if it takes longer. This is just part of the process that you're going through, and just that change in perspective, how beautiful. And you will get there. I know you'll get there. And I've just got this feeling about which company you might be going to get a job with too. So absolutely. We'll share with everyone what we're talking about once it's all happened and come true. Oh, I love it, Shelley. I've loved this. I literally could talk to you for hours longer. But I've loved this conversation, and I've loved that you are in a position right now where you are getting to redefine you and look at what brings you joy, as you said, and what makes you happy. That's not dependent on just making everyone else happy as a priority first and foremost. So can't wait to keep following your journey. And thank you for being so open and sharing some of what's gone on in your gorgeous life. Oh, beautiful. Thank you.